Alright, so it seems to be pardon time just in time for Christmas. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and I'm back in my office, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have to sneak away from the family to sneak this vlog in, but I had to do it because the pardons are raining down and a lot of people are getting a little irked about who is getting pardoned. In particular, although there are a ton of people voicing their discontent, Andrew Yang took to Twitter to criticize Donald Trump over his most recent choice for pardons. At Andrew Yang, if I had won, I was going to pardon people in federal prison for non-violent drug offenses. To which someone humorously responded, "But you didn't, Andy. You folded, dropped out, and shilled for the establishment Dems." Now, I responded to Andrew Yang because I think he does in fact make a legitimate point, although I think he is in fact ignoring the worthy pardons that Donald Trump has issued, but we'll get there, and I responded to Andrew Yang with the following undumb tweet. At the Viva Frei, don't ignore the worthy pardons at Andrew Yang. From what I understand, Stephanie Moore is deserved one. But if you really want to be shocked by, quote, abuse, end quote, of pardon power, look no further than Bill Clinton. At real Donald Trump pales in comparison and can still issue worthy pardons. So first things first, I seem to be incapable of tweeting without a typo. It is a darn curse. It's an embarrassment, but there's nothing I can do with it, so I'm just going to live with all of my Twitter typos. Second, I think Andrew Yang does make a very good point. The most impactful thing that the real Donald Trump...
What did I just call him by his Twitter name?
One of the most impactful things that Donald Trump can in fact do before leaving office, if he in fact leaves office in January 2021, is to issue blanket sweeping pardons for non-violent marijuana drug offenses. My major problems with Andrew Yang's tweets is that I think he jumps the gun a little bit in that even if Trump leaves office in January 2021, he still has a month left to issue worthy pardons, and the other problem with it is that Andrew Yang ignores the worthy pardons that Donald Trump has just issued. There are definitely some political unworthy pardons being inserted into his pardons, but there are definitely worthy pardons that we're going to address in this vlog. But first and foremost, we need to know what a pardon is. The pardon power of the president is based on Article 2 of the United States Constitution, Section 2, Clause 1, which provides, "The president shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment." The U.S. Supreme Court has interpreted the provision to include the power to grant pardons, conditional pardons, commutations of sentence, conditional commutations of sentence, remissions of fines and forfeitures, respites, and amnesties. In other words, the power of the pardon is absolute, and even if certain people feel that it is being abused, which is why I put the term in scare quotes in my tweet, it is the absolute power of the president to pardon whomever he or she chooses to pardon. And this despite certain judges who may have suggested in recent 43-page diatribes that there might be certain limits to the pardon power, and other lawyers who suggested that abusing of the pardon power could in theory be an impeachable offense. And just to explain the difference between a pardon and a commutation in the most 30,000-foot overview of manners, a commutation reduces the criminal conviction to a lesser sentence but does not eliminate civil disabilities, whereas a pardon is basically total forgiveness for the crime but does not imply innocence, although it does eliminate civil disabilities such that the convicted person can now vote or run for office. Now, I have to say that while I consider some of Trump's choices to be somewhat questionable, and we'll get into at least one of them, having seen the way the prosecutorial process has been weaponized for political purposes, in as much as the prosecutorial process has been weaponized for political purposes, the pardon power is going to be exploited for political purposes. It is going to be exploited for political purposes, or at the very least to attenuate the politicization of the prosecutorial process. We have seen the way the prosecutorial process has been weaponized against Michael Flynn, against Roger Stone, and I sort of could anticipate that those two pardons were coming, but when I saw Charles Kushner in the list, that raised an eyebrow for me. For those of you who may not know this or may not have been able to deduce it based on the last name, Charles Kushner is Jared Kushner's father, Jared Kushner being Donald Trump's son-in-law, and if you don't know what Charles Kushner did, let me just read from Wikipedia. On June 30, 2004, Kushner was fined $508,900 by the Federal Election Commission for contributing to Democratic political campaigns in the names of his partnerships when he lacked authorization to do so. In 2005, following an investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey, U.S. Attorney Chris Christie negotiated a plea agreement with him, under which he pleaded guilty to 18 counts of illegal campaign contributions, tax evasion, and witness tampering. And wait until you hear what Charles Kushner is alleged to have done with respect to the witness tampering. The witness tampering charge arose from Kushner's act of retaliation against William Schulder, his sister Esther's husband, who was cooperating with federal investigators. Kushner hired a prostitute he knew to seduce his brother-in-law, arranged to record an encounter between the two, and had the tape sent to his sister. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He served 14 months at federal prison Camp Montgomery in Alabama before being sent to a halfway house in Newark, New Jersey to complete his sentence. He was released from prison on August 25, 2006. As a result of his convictions, Kushner was disbarred and prohibited from practicing law in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. On December 23, 2020, President Trump granted him a full pardon, citing his, quote, record of reform and charity, end quote. Whoa, call me old-fashioned, but what kind of person does that to family? So you know sure as sugar when people see Donald Trump pardoning the father of his son-in-law, you know they're going to cry foul, they're going to cry abuse of the pardon power, and they're not entirely wrong for doing so. Inasmuch as there can be abuse of an absolute power, you know that people are going to look at Charles Kushner and say other people were definitely more deserving of a pardon. Which brings us into one of the other individuals who just got a pardon from Donald Trump, Stephanie Moore. And if you don't know Stephanie Moore's story, it is actually going to shock you, I think. Stephanie Moore is a police officer who was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for releasing her attack dog on someone who was allegedly breaking into a house. The dog bit the person's ankle, giving them 10 stitches. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Sentenced to 10 years in prison after a first trial failed to convict, and she was only charged 5 years after the incident. An incident which apparently went unsanctioned at the time because apparently nobody thought any wrong had been committed at the time. From ABC7 WJLA, Prince George's County, Maryland, ABC7. Stephanie Moore's life changed forever 25 years ago. As a young Prince George's County Police canine officer, she and her partner, Vlawg, were asked to assist on a breaking and entering call in Tacoma Park, Maryland. She and several other officers found 2 men trying to break into a building through the roof. During their arrest, she says one of the men tried to run. She released her dog with the command to bite and hold. The suspect was captured but needed stitches on his calf. 5 years later, she learned what happened that night and had become the subject of a federal civil rights investigation. She was put on trial twice before she was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Moore says she believes she was made a scapegoat at a time the Prince George's County Police Department was in need of reform and the target of Justice Department probes. Moore claims even though she did her time, she continues to be punished. Quote, the conviction follows you around, it invades every aspect, life, personal, and professional, end quote, says Moore. She is hoping President Donald Trump hears her story and rights what she says has always been viewed as a wrong. There seem to be a few typos in that article as well, but I guess it's good to know that I am not the only person who is incapable of writing without typos. Now, I fully appreciate that there will be people out there who think that she got what she deserved. She sicked a dog on an individual, caused harm to him, so 10 years in a federal prison seems about right. While there will be others out there who think that possibly 10 years in a federal prison for sicking your dog on someone who is fleeing arrest after apparently breaking and entering, causing nothing but 10 stitches to his calf, is possibly a little excessive, maybe even politicized. I don't know what was going on in the world at the time. I don't know what went on during her prosecution, but having seen the way people can be prosecuted and prosecuted viciously for political purposes, I am inclined to think that maybe a 10-year sentence was a bit excessive under those circumstances. Some people might say that a police officer responding to a breaking and entering and sicking her dog on a fleeing suspect, if all that occurred was 10 stitches to the calf, maybe this is a good example of use of the pardon power. And if people disagree on the subject, they can agree to disagree so long as they know the facts. But getting back to Andrew Yang's tweet, yes, there are far more deserving people of the pardon than, say, for example, Charles Kushner. There is still time to issue those pardons, but if we want to talk about what could be qualified as abuse of the pardon power, we need to look no further than Bill Clinton. Anybody who dares criticize the way Donald Trump is using the pardon power without also simultaneously blasting the way Bill Clinton did it is playing politics, and this is not a whataboutism. This is about applying a rule evenly and coherently. And what did Bill Clinton do? Because I never fully appreciated what he in fact did, let's just read from Wikipedia. Bill Clinton pardon controversy. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton was criticized for some of his pardons and acts of executive clemency. Pardoning or commuting sentences is a power granted by the U.S. Constitution to sitting U.S. presidents. While most presidents grant pardons throughout their terms, Clinton chose to make nearly a third of them on January 20, 2001, his last day in office. This came to be known as Pardongate. While Clinton pardoned a large number, 450, of people compared with his immediate one-term predecessor, Republican George H.W. Bush, who pardoned only 75, the number of people pardoned by Clinton was comparable to that pardoned by two-term Republican Ronald Reagan and one-term Democrat Jimmy Carter, who pardoned 393 and 534 respectively. Bill Clinton issued 1/3 of his pardons on his last day in office, and who did he pardon among the gang? Roger Clinton, the president's brother, was pardoned for drug charges after having served the entire sentence more than a decade earlier. Roger Clinton would be charged with drunk driving and disorderly conduct in an unrelated incident within a year of the pardon. He was also briefly alleged to have been utilized in lobbying for the Braswell pardon, among others. However, no wrongdoing was uncovered. Mark Rich, a fugitive who had fled the U.S. during his prosecution, was residing in Switzerland. Rich owed $48 million in taxes and was charged with 51 counts of tax fraud, was pardoned of tax evasion. Linda Evans and Susan Rosenberg, members of the radical Weather Underground organization, both had sentences for weapons and explosives charges commuted. Evans served 16 years of her 40-year sentence, and Rosenberg served 16 of her 58 years. Carlos Vignali had his sentence for cocaine trafficking commuted after serving 6 of 15 years in federal prison. And just to show that I am, in fact, capable of giving credit where I think credit is due, one that I happen to agree with. Patty Hearst, who was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army in 1974. After being isolated and threatened with death, she became supportive of their cause, making propaganda announcements for them and taking part in illegal activities. After her arrest in 1975, she was found guilty of bank robbery. Her conviction and long prison sentence were widely seen as unjust, but the procedural correctness of her trial was upheld by the courts. Hearst's sentence was commuted by President Jimmy Carter, and she was pardoned by President Bill Clinton. So that is an overview of the pardon situation, and as Mark Twain wrote, history doesn't change, but it tends to rhyme. So inasmuch as the prosecutorial process in the United States has been weaponized for political purposes, you know the pardon power is going to be exploited to right that ship. 3 great quotes. Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat, but it tends to rhyme. Kierkegaard, life can only be understood backwards, yet it must be lived forwards. And Rod Stewart, I wish I knew then what I know now, or what is it? I wish I knew what I know now when I was younger. I suspect the situation has always been like this to varying degrees, which is specifically why the pardon power exists as sort of the checks and balances of the separation of the powers in the first place. So while there will certainly be some political chicanery, some favors being granted through the pardons, Trump still has time to issue the proper pardons for the deserving people needing those pardons. Will he do it? Only time will tell, but we will certainly do a follow-up on that. And with that said, if you like my videos and you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm.
Feed me Seymour.
If you want to support the channel, all of these support links are in the pinned comment. But more important than that, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and may we have a better and freer 2021. Now you know your vlog. Peace out.